In this first segment, we're going to be talking about the intolerant, or as they like to call it, the tolerant left, literally killing people that don't agree with them. Now, for some reason, they think this is okay, and it is not. It is not okay at all. Now, it is not okay in many, many cases, and it's not okay on any genuine reason at all. But here is one in particular reason why I do not like that statement, the quote, tolerant left. Now, they are not tolerant at all. I mean, as everybody can tell, as everybody already knows, they're not tolerant at all. This report is from Breitbart, and it states that 84-year-old woman was shot handing out pro-life literature in Michigan. Now, this is just disgusting. Why? Why is people being killed for sharing their very opinion? It does not make sense. It does not make sense on why we can get killed for doing the bare minimum. We literally used our First Amendment right as in a United States citizen, and we get killed for it. But other people literally kill people, like this event that we're going to be talking about in the future and a couple minutes from now. But then they don't get arrested. Now, this person, if you had noticed in this Breitbart article, a man in Michigan allegedly shot an 84-year-old woman as she was handing out pro-life literature about an abortion ballot proposal. Now, the victim does not know their identity or the motive of the shooter. The victim is still recovering from her gunshot wound and wishes to remain anonymous while the criminal investigation proceeds. The case is being investigated by Michigan State Police, who will forward the investigation results to the Iowa County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. We have no details to release at this time, it added. So, the Right of Life of Missouri came out and said one of our 84-year-old volunteers said that she was shot in the back/shoulder on Tuesday while going door to door in her town of Lake Odessa to talk about Proposal 3. Now, if you are like me and don't know what Proposal 3 is, Proposal 3 is something I like to use Google to actually find out. Now, when I researched Google, I actually found this article that talks about Proposal 3. Now, Michigan Proposal 3, the right to reproductive freedom, innovative. In the ballot in Michigan as an insulated constitutional amendment on November 8th, 2022. A yes vote would support providing a state constitutional right to reproductive freedom. Now, which is defined to as the right to make and advocate decisions about all matters relating to pregnancy, including but not limited to prenatal care, childbirth, postpartum care, contraception, sterilization, abortion care, miscarriage management, and in-facility care. Now, a no vote would oppose providing a state constitutional right to reproductive freedom in which you do not have. You do not have the constitutional freedom to kill another person. Now, if you do look in our Constitution, we do have the right to live a free and just life. Is that a free and just life if you were just killed? If your mom found out that you were going to be special needs and then your mom killed you, is that free and just to you? No, it's not. You know what also is not free and just? The very next article that we're going to be talking about. A 41-year-old literally killed an 18-year-old. Now, if we normally hear this on the news, we do not get the complete facts, and I will outline with you the complete facts of this situation. A 41-year-old Democrat runs over a teenager with his car, claiming, quote, the teen was part of a Republican extremist group. Now, this really doesn't make a lot of sense to me because most of the time, right, these conservatives are not really, quote, extremist Republicans. And it doesn't even make a lot of sense to me. So he said, and this is a quote from him. This is a quote from the highway patrol captain. Now, he was the one who called 911 to report the crash. Court papers show Brandit called 911 around 2:30 a.m. Sunday and told the 911 dispatcher that he just hit the teenager, claiming the teen was part of a quote Republican extremist group and was calling people to come get Bandit after a political argument. So literally, what caused him to kill somebody else was a political disagreement. Police say Bandit was drunk when he hit and killed Alexton with his SUV in an alleyway. The North Dakota man who allegedly admitted to fatally striking a teenager pedestrian with his car because the pair had a political disagreement was released from jail on Tuesday after posting $50,000 bond. Records show. Shannon Brannett, 41, spent just days in the county jail on criminal charges relating to the death of 18-year-old Carla Exton. Before he posted his $50,000 bond, he was released, according to county jail records. Before. So he was released even before paying the bond. Would this go over well if if a Republican or a conservative ran over a Democrat? No, there will be rallies on the streets. We will burn our cities to the floor if somebody did this on the right-hand side. But why do we let it happen when it comes to the left? Because it's the fact that they want what they want, okay? And they always think that they're in the right. They're almost never in the right. And it's ridiculous at this point. Now, moving on. Now, because of this, and because of a lot of other things, the FBI is actually investigating. Now, what exactly are they investigating? The FBI is investigating a series of attacks and threats against churches and pro-life centers. Now, you already know what this means. The FBI is just going to do their stupid little, oh, let me see here. Oh, I don't see anything, and have their eyes blocked the whole entire time. This is exactly how it always happens. And it's not right. So, if we read the article, we will see that there have been at least 140 incidents of arson, vandalism, graffiti at Catholic churches since May. Now, if we want to do further investigation of this, we will actually see that there have been over 200 attacks on U.S. Catholic churches since May 2020, even worse than what we originally thought. If we would like to see a map of this whole entire situation unfolding, here it is. All over the United States of America, we have churches being arsoned, or we have churches at which arson is being taken place. And it's disgusting. A new spate of at least 82 attacks has occurred since the draft of the Supreme Court opinion proposing the reversal of Roe v. Wade was leaked in the early May 2022, with many including graffiti with the pro-abortion messages. The attacks on Catholic churches have been widespread across the country, affecting 39 states. Hotspots with large clusters of attacks include New York, Denver, Los Angeles, D.C., Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Boston, Houston, Philadelphia, Miami/South Florida. Some of these churches have been attacked multiple times, and that's disgusting. The vandalism that we are seeing today is rising quickly at levels that we have not seen since the late 1800s and the early 1900s, from organized groups such as Know Nothings and the Ku Klux Klan, the KKK. Catholic Vote President Brian Birch wrote, according to an unconfirmed report in June 2022, the Department of Homeland Security has privately warned the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops of, quote, credible threats. That's all they did. That's literally all they did. Against Catholic churches and clingy when Roe v. Wade was overturned. A bulletin from the National Terrorism Advisory System issued on June 7, 2022, warned that if it expects the threat of environment to become more dynamic as several high-profile events could be exploited to justify acts of violence against a range of possible targets, including, quote, faith-based institutions and, quote, houses of worship. Now, the comments under here are completely on my side. Unreal. And we had we had the DOJ warning about threats from both sides, but since it's only leftists being destructive once again, they are once again doing nothing about it. And I completely agree with that. I completely agree with that because leftists never get anything, any repercussions for what they do. It's disgusting. Now, the FBI and the DOJ, the DOJ face pushback over arrest prosecution of Catholic pro-life activists. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you're out of the loop, but I will explain it to you. A Catholic pro-life activist literally went out of an abortion center, literally just handing people papers and saying, "Oh, wait, what's going on? Let's talk about what's going on. Let's say, wait a second, let's not do this abortion. Here's the information on all of these things, so you don't have to go into this abortion center not knowing anything." Now, all he did was hand out some papers, and this guy came up to him. So the guy, was with his son, which is only 13 years old, and somebody disagreed with the bishop, which does not make any sense because the bishop is obviously going to be Catholic. So the bishop and his son was sitting out of an abortion center. Somebody walked up to him and started screaming at the bishop. The bishop and the man exchanged some words. Then the man went up to his son's face and started screaming at him things like, "Oh, your dad's a fag," stuff like that. And it's disgusting. It's disgusting. So the bishop said nope, and he pushed him away. The guy ended up falling on his back and tried to sue the bishop. Now, when this came over to the courts made the right decision and said that it was within his rights to protect his son. You need to step away from his son, and you can't be saying stuff like that. That was the end of it until Joe Biden's DOJ got wind of this and said, wait a second, how about if we just do an investigation? And that's blatantly disgusting. How is the DOJ going to step in and do what the court was ordered to do, or what the court's job is to do? The court's job is to look at the facts and say, okay, there's sufficient evidence to prove or deny your claims, or there is not enough evidence at all, in which we will not even look at your case, in which they didn't even look at the case. So, on Friday, the United States Department of Justice released a statement including the incitement of Mark Hawk of Kittersville, Pennsylvania. He was charged with a violation of the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, the FACE Act. Now, this law subjects any person to intentionally injures, mediates, or interferes with, or attempts to injure, or immediately or infer with any person seeking to provide reproductive health services to federal charges. Now, this is quite biased coming from a law that does not stand by when it comes to the opposite side. If you go to any pregnancy centers, this law does not apply because pregnancy centers were at the heat wave and hotspots for attacks and vandalism ever since Roe v. Wade was overturned. And that's blatantly one-sided, and that's disgusting. It's like they only said that the FACE Act is going to apply to pregnancy centers just so they can look like they're not so one-sided. But at the end of the day, it's up to the courts and it's up to everybody else to enforce these laws that we have at place. Now, at the same exact time, if we don't enforce the law, that means it is back to the one-sided stuff. Now, at the same exact time of this being thrown out, stuff like that, that's what he was tried for. Now, this is when the DOJ came in. The DOJ has indicated that, quote, the defendant is alleged to have twice assaulted a man because he was a volunteer reproductive health care client escort. No, this escort called the bishop a fag. That's quite disgusting. The escort should have some professionalism and know that he cannot be swearing at other people. Just because you're an escort does not mean that you have the right to be calling anybody that word, or any swearing at all. So, if convicted, Hook, which is the bishop, faces up to 11 years in prison and 3 years of supervised release and up to $350,000 in fines, court documents reveal. And court documents also reveal that the grand jury, with the federal government's analysis of what happened that day, and included Huck, which is the bishop, for violating federal law on Tuesday, 3 days before his arrest. That doesn't make any sense. How did he violate the law? So he violated the FACE Act by just using his First Amendment right. That's disgusting. So everybody else thinks that it's disgusting because the crowdfunding platform Give, Send, Go was the host of a fundraiser that the public made for him. And on this website, they said a different story. Now, this is the story that they said. Now, I said the right story, but I added some key points that they said, but this is the story coming straight from him. Quote, last year, Mark and his son was praying in front of the PP, the pregnancy center, at 12 and Lucas. When one of the escorts began harassing Mark's son, they walked down the street away from the entrance to the building. The escort followed them, then continued yelling at Mark's son. Mark pushed him away. As of Tuesday morning, the fundraiser has raised more than $240,000. The proceeds from the fundraiser will go to, quote, help the family with any necessary expenses, as they endure what organizers of the effort categorize as a campaign of, quote, fear and intimidation. The fundraiser has also provided additional details about the bishop's arrest Friday morning. So, quote, at 7 a.m. on Friday, September 23rd, 20 SWAT members bust through the home of Mark Huck. The fundraiser stated, these agents had guns drawn and shields up in the face of Mark and his wife and his 7 young children. Then Mark was handcuffed in front of his family and arrested. The clinic escort directed derogatory language at their 12-year-old son. Ryan Murray Huck reported that when the clinic escort remained in his son's face, her husband, quote, shoved him away from the child, and the guy fell back. She added, he didn't have any injuries or anything, but he tried to sue Mark. When the clinic escort legal challenge against Huck was unsuccessful in the lower courts, the Department of Justice resurfaced the case in federal court last week. While her husband informed the agents of the intention to open the door and pleaded with them to quiet down because he had, quote, 7 babies in the house, the law enforcement officials just, quote, kept pounding and screaming. She classified the experience as scary and traumatic, stressing the kids were just all screaming. I've already reached out to some physicists and psychologists to try to help us through this. I don't really know what's going on. I don't know what's really going to come of it when you see guns pointed at your dad and your mom in your house when you wake up. In a statement to Fox News, an FBI spokesperson pushed back against the Huck's description of the raid, classifying parts of it inaccurate. Quote, there are inaccurate claims being made regarding the arrest of Mark Huck. No SWAT team or SWAT operators were involved. FBI agents with loaded guns. Okay, this was not quoted, but with the loaded guns, okay? FBI agents knocked on Mr. Huck's front door, identified themselves as FBI agents, and asked him to exit the residence, the spokesperson said. He did so, and he was taken into custody without incident or pursuit of indictment. Ryan Murray Huck stated to LifeSite News that she was, quote, that when she was asked Ryan Murray Huck stated to LifeSite News that when she asked the FBI agents to provide a warrant, they replied that they, quote, were going to take him whether they had a warrant or not. That's a blatant violation of our First Amendment right, or I forget which amendment, but that's a blatant violation of our amendment. We need to see if an officer has a warrant to do what they are doing. They cannot search your premise without a warrant. That's it. They cannot arrest you without a warrant. That's it. She protested that you, quote, cannot come into somebody's house and kidnap them at gunpoint. They presented the warrant to her husband and arrested him. Hawk is the founder and president of the King's Men, which the organization's website describes as a ministry to build up other men in the mold of leader, protector, and provider through education, formulation, healing, and action. The bio at the website notes that Huck, a passionate Catholic, has written numerous articles, brochures, and publications on the topics of pornography, homosexuality, abortion, teen sexuality, parenting, and misogyny, masculine spirituality. So, the governor, Doug Marstero, the Republican candidate in Pennsylvania's upcoming gubernatorial election, condemned Huck's arrest as an example of the continued representation of the FBI in prosecution of Joe Biden's DOJ against ordinary Americans. He accused federal law enforcement of going after political enemies of Joe Biden, and I completely agree with that. How many times are we going to watch the FBI raid somebody's house just because Joe Biden doesn't agree with them? That's not right. So, moving on, we will talk about moving on to a dozen takes. Hey, were you really going to click off this video before leaving a like and subscribing down below? Wow, so rude.